Follow your muse, we tell artists. Follow the money, we urge the rest. But what if pursuing our creative tendencies leads us to that hidden treasure? Increasingly, the spark of innovation is driving real economic success in our region. Even as we lament the loss of jobs overseas, a number of imaginative entrepreneurs are adding billions of dollars in benefits to our economy. One of them is a world-famous photographer. The other is building an ice cream empire. Together, they'll explain how to cultivate both passion and profit. I'm Hanson Hossein. Welcome to Four Peaks. Welcome back. I'm with ice cream purveyor Molly Moon and photographer Chase Jarvis. So, guys, there was a great article reviewing Seattle 100 in the Seattle Times that says, it's as if you've been walking down the same street your whole life without ever stopping to acknowledge the people that pass you by, then suddenly realizing every one of them has something fascinating to talk about. I think that was a really nice way of sort of looking at these people in here. And Molly is one of the people in the book.
That's the big reveal of the show.
That's the big
today,
reveal,
right?
yeah. So we're going to open it up, but
Great.
maybe while I'm trying to find the page, which I think Molly knows by heart, which is 17. Why did you choose Molly?
That's pretty much a no-brainer. If you have to ask that, you haven't been paying attention, because she even introduced her as ice cream purveyor. I would more call her ice cream princess, or empress, if you will. No, like the underlying driving principle for Seattle 100 was people who are driving culture in Seattle. And Seattle, whether people know it or believe it or not, is an amazing food city. And food comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes. And even the fact that Molly was willing to break out and do something, ice cream in Seattle, where the average temperature is like 48 degrees, like that is innovative in and of itself, but the way that she did it with local ingredients and did it out in front, like, to me, that's beautiful. That's driving culture, driving food culture.
So speaking of beautiful, Molly, how do you think Chase captured you?
I loved the photo shoot. The experience was really fun too. Like, the first thing Chase and his crew did was offer me a drink as soon as I walked into the studio. And, you know, they made me up. I got hair and makeup, and it was a super fun afternoon. It was the first summer that my Wallingford shop had been open. And so I was coming from the ice cream kitchen. I smelled like waffle cones and chocolate. I was actually kind of covered in cocoa powder.
I loved it.
And it was a break from, you know, turning the ice cream, and it was a really fun day. I loved the way the photos have turned out. And
what were you trying to capture of Molly when you sort of put her in that position?
Well, I think that's best told with the pictures. You know, the Molly came in. She is so good at what she does. She's really an amazing young entrepreneur. She's very captivating. She could sell, I don't know, probably has sold, as they say, ice cream to the Eskimos or to First People up in Alaska, because you're so passionate about your story. And I wanted to capture that focus. But there's a sassiness about her that you can tell just by sitting across. I'm
trying to contain the sassiness.
But so those are things that we wanted. You know, she had her dog with her, and I thought that was just an amazing sort of sidekick, if you will, because you guys seemed like two peas in a pod. So it was pretty organic too. I think we shot a lot of pictures of you because you were really photogenic. So.
Oh, thanks.
That's the way it unfolds.
So that passion of Molly, that passion of creativity, which is really embodied in this book, is actually also measurable from an economic point of view as well. The city of Seattle actually put together a study recently that you were part of, saying that this actually has an impact. What's the bottom line that we should know about creativity and people like Molly and what they do for us?
Well, I think the first thing, and again, at the risk of sounding trite, all of this was born from pure passion. What Molly does with food and with ice cream, it's born out of her loving it, and me with art and creativity, trying to do this project because I was so passionate about the city which I was born and raised. And the city noticed this particular project, and after I don't know, I'd been out for a while, and I got a call from the mayor's office. I said, you know, could we interview? We like this project. It's interesting. We want to learn a little bit more about what you did, about the curation of the list, and we want to look at it from an economic standpoint. So they funded a study that had been going on for about a year and just wrapped and was released not too long ago that says something that, again, art is meant to do work, in my opinion. It's meant to turn heads, stop people, get people to think and act. And you can't always predict what that work's going to be. In this case, again, the mayor's office undergoing this study, it came back with what I think is a really cool finding, that the economic impact on the region is really, really serious. In fact, I think of the categories that I did sort of brought out in the book, they account for, and these being the leaders of those categories, food and entrepreneurialism and sports, for example, they contribute $13.5 billion to the regional economy and 170,000 jobs. And that's, culture, creativity, and I think if you polled if you polled the region, you wouldn't think that. Yeah. And so this revealing of how culture impacts our economy is something that is new, and that's something that the world can get behind, that the mayor can get behind and say, wait a minute, here we're all trying to track down big business. Like, what about funding at a grassroots level? Culture is our region's new natural resource.
How do you feel about that? How does that square with your business and philosophical objectives being part of that and hearing it framed that way, Molly?
I mean, I super support the premise, and I believe the study, absolutely. I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, Chase, but there was an economic impact statement or study done on just the music industry 5 or maybe 7 years ago that said some pretty similar things. And absolutely, culture is a huge part of our economy, and when you take culture and food, and if you want to put culture and food together, out of an economy, there is a lot left on the table. And there are a lot of jobs, the service industry, just in food, there are a lot of jobs being created every day by this, surge in the foodiness of Seattle. And I don't think that's to be taken lightly.
So how do we cultivate that? In fact, Molly, you just recently got back from a trip to D.C. where you were invited to sit on a presidential committee about some of this, right?
Sweet.
Yeah.
What was that all about?
The mayor's office actually sent several business leaders from Seattle to a day talking with White House administration staff about job creation. And it was really impressive. And the administration staffers were saying, what can we do to help you business leaders create more jobs? What governmental barriers can we help remove? And then they also did quite a bit of education, letting us know what they are doing, what they have been working on, and some of the resources that we might not know about as business owners that we should be tapping into. One of the more fascinating ones I thought was a new tax credit from the Obama administration for every unemployed veteran that we hire.
Oh, wow.
And it's a significant tax credit. And I think it's just for vets, like post 9/11 vets. And it's made me think I'm going to go find a Veterans Affairs office to match my jobs this year with some of their candidates and see if we can't hire a few vets. And I think that feels really good. It adds a diversity to my company that I'd love, and there's a tax credit involved. So it was really educational, and I also felt like the administration was really listening to business leaders from Seattle.
See, that's terrific, Chase, to hear that at the national level, to see that value and that connection and sort of bringing it right back down. When you think about it from a local level then, and sort of capturing this and recognizing that it is the natural resource you call it, what else can we do to cultivate and sustain this amazing economic impact?
Well, I think we need to drive more culture, and that's one of the reasons that some of the basic tenets that my sort of life mission is about the democratization of creativity and its processes. That's why.
That's why you don't mind the cell phone camera, even though you use the camera to make a living from it.
Yeah, absolutely, and that was a big a big plan. It was very, very intentional to try and make more people creative. My 65-year-old mother is a great example. She'd been told her whole life that you're either neutral or not creative, and I put an iPhone 1 in her hand and then made an app for her that she started shooting with, and suddenly she herself felt incredibly empowered. Her friends noticed, like, wow, your photos on Facebook are always the coolest. And that, if you take that idea and you extrapolate it across millions or billions of people, that raises the level, that gets people more engaged, and the creativity that I'm talking about is not just photography or filming or painting or whatever. There's a ton of creativity in business. What Molly's done with business, there's creativity in sustainability, in policy. There's creativity in every walk of life, and that's really what this, who are the people who are driving culture. There's a lot of the people in here. In fact, that was one of the sort of criteria. The central criterion was how creative is what is it that they're doing. And so creativity permeating all these things, like that's mission critical for a healthy economy, for a forward-looking, populace on any level, national, global, national, or local.
So that said then, Molly, from a very practical point of view as a businesswoman, even the report states this very clearly. The city is very process heavy and very light on just doing it. We're progressive in spirit, but not in action. In fact, we had one of our first shows was with Lee Canlis, who's also in this book, about Seattle Nice. That Seattle's a really nice place, but just doesn't know how to really execute in the end because either we're too polite or too passive aggressive or whatever else. Have you encountered that kind of spirit that sort of makes things a little hard to get things done sometimes?
Honestly, I don't know that I have. I mean, I think that starting my business was surprisingly easier than I thought it would be. And being able to be creative and have creativity received well in this city has been pretty easy and really fun. And I haven't felt a lot of barriers to execution at all. And I see creative people executing all around me, so I don't know.
So you feel like that people are rising to the occasion to sort of hit that level? I mean, Chase, have you seen that? Because that struck me as a very stark, self-revelatory observation from the city of Seattle.
Yeah, well, I think the idea about it is that it tends to operate in silos, and I don't think that's Seattle necessarily in and of Seattle. It's a sort of a global phenomenon, and trying to break down some of those barriers, because we've tended to hang out with the people that we run with. Architects hang out with architects, filmmakers hang out with filmmakers, and that's one of the things that this book was aiming to do, is trying to break down some of those barriers. I mean, even on the particular days that I was shooting, I would bring in, say, Molly, and then a Dennis Hayes, who's founder of Earth Day, and there's some crossover there, but not the same. And that idea, I think, was one that can challenge a little bit of this notion that you brought up here. I believe that we're a city of doers. It's not the shoegazing sort of place that people talk about it being. And this trying to break down that idea. And sure, I'm sure there's a lot of people who wish they were doing more. I wish I was doing more. You guys probably do as well. But that's not the pattern that I see. I see butt kicking and innovation, and that's what we should celebrate. It's our thing. It's the thing we do best.
Well, that's interesting because you mentioned silos. Even Four Peaks is meant to break down those barriers of these four elements: innovation, entertainment, community, and entrepreneurship. This report does say talk about this cross-pollination, that members of the Seattle 100 actively choose to locate to this region and deliberately stay, oftentimes despite more lucrative opportunities to pursue similar work in other locations. So that there is that going on. People can be elsewhere, but they sort of see this collaborative spirit here, and they can be part of that. You've been in Idaho and Montana, and you're a breakout success. You must have thought that, I could maybe go to San Francisco or New York with my ice cream.
I actually lived in San Francisco when I was working in politics. I ran Music for America from San Francisco for a few years and worked kind of splitting my time between San Francisco, New York, and Seattle. And when I knew I wanted to get out and live somewhere permanently, there was no question that it was Seattle or bust.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, there's a great study, I think it was it the Wall Street Journal, said that Seattle and Washington, D.C. are neck and neck with the most desirable place for young people to move to. And it's because of our innovation, because of our arts and culture. And I think that's a fascinating thing that we should, maintain that, stick that stake in the ground and wave that flag and continue to draw young people. I mean, you said it's Seattle or bust, right?
Yeah.
And there's a reason that I was more familiar, arguably, with New York and Paris than I was with Seattle when I made this book. Despite having lived here, I needed to get into the paint and get my hands dirty.
So if we're talking about breaking down the silos and helping each other out, Molly, is there a particular challenge you're facing right now that you could share with us that we could sort of try to brainstorm and figure out how we can help you fix it?
Oh my God.
Sell more ice cream, because I can definitely.
How about ice cream sales in January? No, I'm kidding.
Or vice versa. We can go to Chase first too if you
No,
want.
I like it in her court.
Gosh, you're really putting me on the spot. Something that I would like help with. I have a book coming out next month or in April, and I've never done that. Do you have any advice for me?
I do. The advice that I have would be to not necessarily rely on your publisher. I'm sure you have a great publisher,
Yeah.
Which I think I know who it is, but I don't want to run the risk of blowing it. So, but they won't have all the answers for marketing your book. So I think you are a great marketer to be able to get out there and push your book in a way that you want it. I would suggest socially, use social networks and a lot of the fabric of your friends to help you spread the word. And as one of your friends with a reasonable sized social following, I'll pimp that book, because ice cream, who's not going to get loved for sharing ice cream?
I have a kind of a funny story about how we are promoting the book that is in a very different way. So I was trying to do that, use the Rolodex, be creative, and I knew that the CEO of Sur La Table, the kitchen stores all over the country, was following me on Twitter. And I couldn't get through to someone at Sur La Table to see if they would carry my book. So I just tweeted at him and asked him to go to lunch with me. And he got right back to me and said he'd love to. I ended up taking him to Sitka and Spruce for lunch.
Nice moves, man.
And Sur La Table is carrying my book in all 92 stores and rolling out a line of 10 Molly Moon's products this year.
Wow. Well, you are Molly Moon after all. I would respond to you as well immediately on Twitter as well. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So yeah, using your networks and social media and being creative and being courageous with reaching out paid off.
All right, Chase, your turn.
Great.
Challenge.
My challenge is, I think that the group of people that you surround yourself with is arguably some of the most important things in life, because it helps you learn, helps you achieve. And so I would ask, my challenge is always trying to meet new people. And so my challenge, or my request of you, is someone in your network is someone that I should really know, and maybe you could help me meet that person. Maybe it's even the CEO of Sur La Table.
Sure.
No, anything. There's something interesting and creative that I wouldn't expect.
Is there anything, is there a way for you to make that happen? Do you think, if you think of who Chase's circles are, can you break him out of his comfort zone, you think, with people you know?
I'm very nervous.
Because you already stole your Rolodex, apparently.
Right. I'll have to think on that, because I think half my friends are in that book, so I'm gonna have to really dig deep.
Hey, let's go as big as you can think. I'm happy to go there.
Well, I think that's a good place to conclude our conversation. Chase Jarvis, Molly Moon, thank you for sharing your vision on how to profit from passion. When we return, Media Space, reclaiming my content, why I'm resetting my relationship with social media. And now let's switch into the media space. I read recently that personal data is the oil of the digital age. All those personal stories that we share online have value and serve as currency, except that we so freely surrender them in return for Facebook and Google. Somehow, we see these services as a fair trade for the precious commodity that is our online behavior. I've long considered how social media platforms facilitate content distribution. I enjoy sharing my photos, films, and stories, but I've only just begun to think about who's profiting most from my creativity, and I don't like what it adds up to. Facebook lays claim to the content that we do share with overly complicated terms of service. They want to make it easier for us to give it all away, to be as public as possible. As the company itself goes public, we now see that our personal data is worth billions of dollars to it. So, I deleted my original Facebook profile a few weeks ago. I don't hate Facebook, I just don't trust it, or Google. I refuse to allow these social utilities to track my action throughout the web. If Facebook wants to make money off me, I think it's only fair that I should make something off of it. So, I started a new account primarily for professional communication. If I do want to share content, I'll do so on platforms where my ownership rights are clear and not subject to royalty-free licenses or facial recognition algorithms. This has all inspired me to come up with my own terms of service. 1, the content that I create is mine. 2, you may benefit from my personal data, but only the data that I expressly share with you. I get to use your service for personal or professional objectives. You get some of my data. 3, I will generally only share things online that I would feel free to publicly express in a conversation, a lecture, or in writing. If I truly want to give it away, I'll do so under a Creative Commons license. 4, in all other cases, you should pay me for the use of online me. As for me on Twitter, I'm HRH Media. On TV and in real life, I'm Hanson Hossein.